There's a deep inherent truth within each of us, a truth that transcends logic, time, and space. It's a truth rooted in faith, one that we sometimes forget in the midst of life's trials. But I'm here to remind you, trust God's process. He knows the way. There are moments when the path ahead seems uncertain and the road feels long. When we find ourselves asking, why me or why now, it's easy to get lost in the chaos. But in these moments, we must remember one thing. God's plan for us is not only greater than what we can see, but also more beautiful than what we could have imagined. Trusting in God's process means embracing divine timing, understanding that everything unfolds at the right time, even when it doesn't make sense to us. This is a crucial aspect of faith, recognizing that our own perception of timing may not align with God's greater plan. In our human experience, we often find ourselves in situations where we want things to happen immediately, desiring instant results and quick answers to our problems. We want to see the fruits of our labor now, to know that our efforts are leading somewhere. Yet, the reality is that God's timing works differently, and it often requires us to wait, to remain patient, and to trust that something greater is at work. When we speak of divine timing, we must first acknowledge that it transcends our understanding. What we see as a delay, a detour, or a moment of stagnation may be exactly what is needed to prepare us for what is to come. We may be focused on the surface level, the desire for immediate success, for a change in circumstances, but God's vision is much broader, extending beyond the present moment and into the future. He knows the perfect moment for every opportunity to present itself, for every breakthrough to occur, and for every dream to be realized. His timing is not bound by our limited understanding of what's right or when it's supposed to happen. We often struggle with the idea of waiting, of being patient. The waiting period is one of the most difficult aspects of trusting God's process, as it challenges our need for control and our desire for certainty. Yet it is in these times that we are refined. We learn patience, humility, and resilience. During the waiting, we are prepared for what lies ahead. Our hearts are molded, our character shaped, and our minds aligned with the greater purpose God has for us. The wait is not wasted time, but rather a season of growth and preparation. We are learning to trust, learning to align ourselves with God's plan, and learning that our personal desires may not always match up with what is best for us in the long run. Furthermore, divine timing often reveals itself through life's seemingly random events or delays. We may be tempted to feel frustrated when things don't move as quickly as we'd like, but this frustration comes from our limited perspective. The reality is that what we think we need right now may not be what is truly best for us at this moment. It is in the waiting, in the moments of uncertainty, that we are called to surrender our own will and place our trust in something greater. There is a wisdom in waiting that we cannot always see, but when we choose to trust in God's timing, we open ourselves to the possibility of things working out in ways we never imagined. The challenge is to let go of our expectations and control, to release our need to rush through life and instead embrace each step as it comes. When we trust God's timing, we begin to see that there is a perfect order to all things. The pieces of the puzzle are falling into place at exactly the right moment, even if we can't yet see the full picture. Divine timing teaches us to be patient, to trust the process, and to recognize that everything is unfolding precisely as it should. Patience is not merely the ability to wait, it is how we behave while waiting. In trusting God's process, we are asked to embrace patience, not as a passive state, but as an active, purposeful practice. During times of waiting, many of us struggle, feeling as though time is slipping away or that nothing is happening. We often focus on the external circumstances, our goals not yet achieved, dreams not yet realized, and in doing so, we overlook the internal transformation that is taking place within us. God's process does not merely involve external progress, but the deeper work of shaping us from the inside out. The waiting period, though challenging, is necessary for this growth. Patience is forged in moments when we cannot rush ahead, when we must stand still and trust that the unfolding process is just as important as the outcome. When we are patient, we allow space for God's plan to work in its own time. It's easy to feel disheartened when things are not progressing as we expect, but real strength is found in the ability to remain composed, grounded, and hopeful despite the seeming lack of movement. Often, in our impatience, we try to rush through life, wanting to skip ahead to the part where we see the results of our hard work. But true growth doesn't come from rushing through the process. It comes from being fully present in each moment, accepting it as it is, and trusting that it's all part of something much greater. When we wait, we are not stagnant. It's like the process of planting seeds. They don't immediately grow into full plants, but during their time in the soil, the seed is absorbing nutrients, taking root and strengthening itself. The same is true for us. During the waiting period, we are growing, learning, and evolving. Though we may not see the changes right away, these are the quiet, invisible moments of transformation. We may not see the progress, but it's happening beneath the surface. Each day we endure the wait, we are becoming more resilient, more focused, and more aligned with what is to come. Patience teaches us to trust in divine timing. We might not see the full picture now, but every step we take, even in the stillness, is moving us towards something greater. Trusting God's process means understanding that the waiting period is not a detour, but an integral part of the journey. We are not meant to rush through it. We are meant to embrace it. Patience doesn't come easily. It requires practice. It requires faith, and it requires surrender. It is in the moments when we feel like giving up, when we feel like the wait is too long, that we have the opportunity to deepen our faith and strengthen our trust. When we learn to be patient, we learn to let go of the pressure of time. We begin to understand that just because things aren't moving quickly doesn't mean they aren't moving in the right direction. True patience comes from the deep-seated belief that things are happening exactly as they should, and that in the end, the wait will be worth it. God's process requires patience, and patience, in turn, requires faith. The faith to believe that the waiting is not in vain, and that in time, everything will unfold in perfect alignment with God's plan for us. Letting go of control is one of the most powerful acts of faith we can embrace in trusting God's process. We often live our lives with an overwhelming desire to steer the course of every situation, every moment. We feel as though if we just control the outcomes, if we just manage the timing and direction, we can ensure success and avoid failure. But this need for control often leads to stress, anxiety, and frustration as we wrestle with the unpredictable nature of life. Trusting in God's process requires us to release our grip on the need to control every detail and instead place our trust in something far greater than ourselves. In the act of letting go, we free ourselves from the constant pressure of trying to make things happen on our own. We must accept the reality that we are not in control of everything, and that some aspects of life are simply beyond our comprehension. Letting go is not a sign of weakness or giving up. It is an act of strength and surrender to divine wisdom. It means acknowledging that God's plan is greater than anything we could have imagined for ourselves. When we allow ourselves to release control, we make space for God's greater purpose to unfold in its perfect timing, even if it doesn't align with our own expectations. This surrender to divine will doesn't mean that we sit idly by, waiting for life to happen to us. It doesn't mean abandoning effort or ambition. It means releasing the obsessive need to dictate the course of events. It's about shifting our focus from controlling the outcome to trusting in the process itself. We might not know how the future will unfold, but we can trust that every step we take, every action we make, is leading us toward what is meant for us. Letting go of control is about relinquishing the anxiety that comes with trying to predict every moment, knowing that God is orchestrating everything with a higher purpose. In letting go, we also come to understand that our timing is not always in alignment with God's. We may want things to happen sooner, faster, or in a different way, but God's timing is always perfect. When we try to control the pace, we often end up forcing things that aren't meant to happen yet, or we resist changes that are necessary for our growth. Learning to let go of control is an invitation to trust in the process of becoming rather than fixating on the destination. Each part of the journey, even the waiting and the uncertainty, is essential for our transformation. One of the hardest aspects of letting go is the fear of the unknown. We often feel safer when we can predict and control what's ahead, but in letting go, we step into a space of trust and faith, where we rely not on our limited vision, but on the wisdom and guidance of a higher power. It's in this surrender that we find peace. When we release our need to control every outcome, we begin to experience a sense of freedom because we are no longer bound by the weight of expectations and fear. Letting go of control is an act of profound trust, one that opens us to the limitless possibilities of God's plan. It invites us to step into a life of faith, where we believe that whatever happens is exactly what we need in order to grow, evolve, and become who we are meant to be. Embracing uncertainty is one of the most profound and transformative ways we learn to trust God's process. Life is inherently uncertain, filled with moments of doubt, confusion, and unexpected change. While many of us seek to find stability and certainty, the reality is that we cannot predict every outcome or control every aspect of our journey. This uncertainty can be unsettling, especially when we feel unsure of where we are heading or whether we are on the right path. However, it is in embracing this uncertainty that we discover a deeper level of trust in God's plan for our lives. Uncertainty forces us to relinquish the illusion of control and step into a space of trust, where we let go of our need to know exactly what will happen next. It challenges us to move forward despite the unknowns, to take action even when the destination is unclear. We may not have all the answers, but we are learning to trust that the answers will come in their time. When we embrace uncertainty, we are choosing to trust that every step we take is leading us exactly where we need to go, even if we cannot see the full picture. In embracing uncertainty, we also come to understand that faith is not about having all the answers, but about trusting the process, even when we don't have them. We might not know how our dreams will be realized, how our challenges will be overcome, or what the next chapter of our lives will look like, but faith invites us to step forward in the dark, believing that God is leading us through it. This kind of faith allows us to act without fear, to move through life with confidence that whatever we encounter is part of a bigger divine plan. When we embrace uncertainty, we also open ourselves up to growth and transformation. The unknown forces us to adapt, to stretch beyond our comfort zones, and to trust in our ability to handle whatever comes our way. It is through uncertainty that we learn resilience and strength. The road ahead may not always be clear, but each moment of uncertainty provides an opportunity for us to develop greater trust in both ourselves. And every challenge, every obstacle is an invitation to grow and evolve. And it is through embracing these moments of uncertainty that we find our true potential. Furthermore, embracing uncertainty allows us to release our attachment to specific outcomes. Often we get caught up in our own plans and expectations, believing that there is only one way things can unfold. But God's process is often bigger and more expansive than we can imagine. When we embrace uncertainty, we allow ourselves the freedom to explore different possibilities and to be open to outcomes that we may not have considered. We are learning to trust that even if things don't go as we planned, they are going according to a greater plan that we may not yet understand. The journey of embracing uncertainty is not easy, and it requires courage, vulnerability, and faith. It means stepping into the unknown without all the answers and trusting that we are being guided every step of the way. It means letting go of the need for control and embracing the beauty of not knowing exactly what comes next. In doing so, we open ourselves to a deeper connection with God's process, trusting that every uncertainty we face is part of our personal growth and transformation. Letting go of the fear of failure is one of the most liberating aspects of trusting God's process. Fear of failure is something that affects us all at various points in our lives. It holds us back from taking risks, pursuing our dreams, and stepping into the unknown. The fear of not succeeding, of making mistakes, or of falling short of expectations can paralyze us, keeping us stuck in a cycle of indecision and hesitation. However, when we learn to trust in God's process, we can begin to release this fear, recognizing that failure is not the end, but simply a part of the journey. Failure, in the context of God's process, is not a defeat. It is not a reflection of our worth or abilities, but rather a stepping stone toward growth and learning. We tend to view failure as something to avoid at all costs, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful tools for transformation. Every setback, every mistake, and every failure holds valuable lessons that guide us towards success. It is through failure that we often gain the clarity, wisdom, and experience necessary to move forward in life. When we trust God's process, we begin to see failure from a different perspective. Instead of fearing it, we embrace it as an opportunity for growth. We understand that every challenge we face is part of a greater plan, and that failure is just one of the many experiences that will shape us into the people we are meant to become. It is important to recognize that God's plan is not contingent on our success or failure, but on our willingness to keep moving forward, no matter what happens. Letting go of the fear of failure means allowing ourselves to step outside of our comfort zones. It requires courage to take risks and to pursue what we believe we are meant to do, even when the outcome is uncertain. Fear often keeps us small, preventing us from reaching our full potential. But when we release that fear, we open ourselves to new possibilities, to new experiences, and to the growth that comes from stepping into the unknown. We begin to understand that failure is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced, because it is through failure that we often discover our true strength and resilience. Trusting God's process also means trusting that He will guide us even when things don't go as planned. We may make mistakes, face disappointments, or experience setbacks, but we can take comfort in knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Our failures are never permanent. They are simply part of the greater journey. By trusting in God's process, we learn that even in moments of failure, there is purpose and meaning. The lessons learned from those moments become the foundation for future success. When we let go of the fear of failure, we shift our focus from the outcome to the process. We no longer see failure as something that defines us, but rather as a natural part of the journey. Every step, whether it's a success or a failure, brings us closer to the fulfillment of our purpose. Trusting in God's process requires the courage to keep going even when the path is unclear or the outcomes are uncertain. It is in letting go of the fear of failure that we find true freedom. Knowing that our journey is not about perfection, but about growth, learning, and the faith that God is guiding us every step of the way. Surrendering to God's timing is a fundamental aspect of trusting His process. So often we are eager to move forward in life, to reach our goals, or to see the outcomes of our efforts right now. We live in a world where instant gratification is the norm, and patience is a rarity. We want things to happen on our timeline, and when they don't, frustration and doubt begin to creep in. However, trusting in God's process requires that we release our desire for immediate results and accept that His timing is always perfect, even when we don't understand it. There are moments in life when we feel stuck, waiting for doors to open, for opportunities to come, or for situations to change. And it's easy to become disheartened during these times, feeling as though nothing is happening or that we are being overlooked. But in reality, God is always working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. Surrendering to His timing means understanding that there is a purpose in the waiting. While we may want things to unfold according to our own schedule, God's plan is unfolding in a way that is perfectly designed for our growth and success. Learning to trust in God's timing requires patience. It means resisting the urge to rush ahead or to force things to happen before their time. We must recognize that certain things need to align, and that some seasons of our lives are meant to be a time of preparation. Waiting does not mean inactivity or passivity. It is an active process of trusting, growing, and becoming. Sometimes the greatest lessons come during the waiting period, but these moments teach us to rely on God, to grow in faith, and to understand that there is much more happening than meets the eye. When we surrender to God's timing, we also begin to understand that His perspective is far greater than ours. We may not see the bigger picture, but He does. He knows exactly what we need, and when we need it. Our impatience often comes from our limited view of the world, but when we trust in His timing, we are choosing to have faith that His plan is greater than anything we could ever orchestrate on our own. It's about acknowledging that we do not need to know everything right now. We simply need to trust that in His perfect time, everything will fall into place. The challenge of surrendering to God's timing is often tied to our desire for control. We want to know when things will happen, how they will happen, and what the outcome will be. But the more we try to control the timing, the more we struggle with frustration and disappointment. True peace comes when we surrender our timeline to God and trust that He is orchestrating every moment in our lives for our good. We must learn to release our tight grip on time and instead trust that God is always working in ways that we cannot yet see. In the end, surrendering to God's timing is not about passively waiting for life to happen, but about aligning our hearts with His plan. It's about trusting that we are exactly where we need to be at this moment, and that every step, whether fast or slow, is leading us toward our purpose. It is through this surrender that we experience true peace, knowing that God's timing is always right and that in His hands, everything is working together for our good. Trusting God's process is a transformative journey that requires faith, patience, and a willingness to let go of control. It invites us to embrace uncertainty, recognize that setbacks and failures are part of the learning process, and surrender to God's perfect timing. Each step, whether forward or backward, is guiding us toward growth, understanding, and fulfillment. When we let go of our need for immediate results, embrace the unknown, and trust that God knows the way, we free ourselves from the burdens of fear and doubt. Instead, we begin to live with purpose, confidence, and the peace that comes from knowing that we are always in His care. God's process may not always align with our expectations, but it is always aligned with our highest good. Through trust, we find the strength to move forward, knowing that every moment is part of a greater plan. Thank you.